Welcome back to day 3 of Grief Week. This has been such an emotional week, and I'm just so grateful to how candid our friend Sandra has been. And I just want to say one thing. You can have a mentor. I think I've said this before, but you can have a mentor that doesn't know they're your mentor. You can follow people and model your lives after people that don't even know that you're following them. And that's sort of what I did with you, because your story has always been one of my greatest fears. And so I never wanted to say anything to you about that, because I always thought, what do you say to someone, which is what we're going to talk about today, what to say and what not to say to someone grieving. I never really wanted to say anything, but I always looked up to you. I thought, wow, she's got so much grace and so much strength, and she's just got such an amazing character. And if that happened to me, I don't think I would be that way. And so you find people that have the strengths you want. So I love that.
So I have a fun mentoring story. So Tana and I got into a fight about something. We were not doing well. And she told me, she sort of went to you and complained about me. And rather than what many friends do, which is, oh yeah, he's really an awful human being and you should be mad.
Yeah, never have friends that do that.
You reflected back how she could respond in a helpful way that completely diffused what went on between
And by the way, that is why I go to friends like Sandra. And I don't go to friends that I know are going to say, he's a jerk, let's go have a drink. Like, I don't do that. I don't believe in having friends like that when you're married, because it's not helpful. So the friends you have, think about the friends you have. It's important to have friends who elevate you and respect your marriage. So that's a huge thing.
So I'm eternally grateful. And I think your fear about losing Chloe, because when we first met,
I had to go to therapy over it. I went to 2 years of therapy.
Huge, but it's common. It's what I've heard as being a psychiatrist the last 40 years. It's a very common fear, because when you love someone so much, the fear of losing them can really drive you a little bonkers.
And I had a childhood that was full of trauma, like you did. So you wanted to be this mother. I related to your story on so many levels. I wanted to be a mother that, like, my mom was a great mom, but she wasn't there, and she was young, and she didn't have education.
She's a great mom for what she had experienced, but she's not a great mom.
But she was young. I'm finishing. I want to honor my mother, though.
And I love your mother. So she is a great mother-in-law.
Right. So but we didn't have it. She didn't have an education. We didn't have finances. She was gone all the time. So I wanted to be something different if I could. And so that's why, and that fear, and I wanted to create that. And I ended up with this fear that I didn't even want her out of my sight. And it was hard. And when I saw you and I saw something different, I'm like, oh, there's someone I can model myself after. And that's what's so important.
So actually I have a podcast review I want to read. Overcoming ADD. I love Tana Amen's no nonsense approach to nutrition. And listening to the podcast has taught me many valuable lessons to help my brain, my life, especially when it comes to dealing with my ADD. This is from Alicia from the US. Thank you for listening. Please leave more podcasts. Now, in my new book, Feel Better Fast and Make It Last, please get it. There's a whole section on post-traumatic stress disorder and grief, because there's so many people suffer with those issues that I thought, well, what are the ways you can feel better quickly? And part of it is a process, but there are clearly things you can do to hurt yourself, and clearly things you can do to help yourself. And in it, while I was thinking about it, I thought, well, what are things you really shouldn't say to someone who's grieving?
Well, one of the things somebody said to me was, I just lost my dog. I know how you're feeling.
Oh my God, no.
So don't say that to somebody.
Don't say that.
Don't say that. Or your pet or something. And you're kind of like, And I understand.
Loss of pet is really,
it's really important, but
it's not the same thing.
No, it's not. So, the comparing to different their losses.
And you can't
Really,
compare
No,
losses.
you can't.
Ever.
No.
So what do you think about the list? How are you doing? It's one thing not to say because they're doing
Yes,
terrible. How are you
right.
doing? You'll be okay after a while.
Right.
I understand how you feel. You shouldn't feel that way. Stop crying. At least she's in a better place.
Yeah.
At least she lived a long life. Many people die young. Well, I've had so many mothers who've lost babies. She brought this on herself. Aren't you over it yet? He's been dead for a while.
People don't really say these things.
They
Yes,
do.
they do.
There
They
is-
do.
there is a
They
reason
really
just-
do.
For everything.
Horrified.
They really do.
God's in charge.
Yeah.
She was such a good person. God wanted her to be with him. Just give it time. Time heals. Time does not heal unless you take the right steps.
Right.
You're young. You can still have other children.
Yes.
You'll do it better next time. It was just a dog or a cat. You can have another one. Stay busy. Don't think about it, which is actually how Lincoln handled it. So Lincoln lost one of his children when he was in the White House. And his wife actually became psychotic after that happened.
I remember reading
He dug his son up several times because he couldn't let go. It was so sad. And he worked to get over his grief. And he never really got over his grief. You have to be strong for your spouse, your children, and just move on. So
Did anyone
We
say
sort
anything
of
else
a-
to you? I want to see if they've said anything else to her.
No, those are pretty those are pretty things and actually they're hurtful. And I remember one time I was at the grocery store. I was at Bristol Farms, and it was really early on. And a woman that I knew very well, saw me, and she turned around and went the other way. She actually saw me. I saw her, and she turned around the other way.
She didn't know what to say.
probably didn't know what to say.
it made her uncomfortable.
So it
and
made her
she's
uncomfortable,
conflict avoidant.
which grief does with people.
Well, because it's our fear.
Yes, it is. And you don't want to look at that in the face kind of thing. So, that in itself was hurtful. She may not have, she probably just could have come up and just hugged me, or just, really, there are no words that anybody is going to say to you to make you feel any better than what the ache in your heart. So, but when you don't say anything and
But when you
just
get
hug,
disconnected from
Yes.
people you know,
Yes.
it's worse.
Yeah.
Yes, and that happens a lot in grief. I've been able to counsel a few people from, Saddleback has said, they just lost a child in a car accident. Can you go and talk to the parents? And so I wait for a while and call them. And a lot of times, they are dealing with relatives and family that aren't, cooperating or, think it's all about them as well. And so a lot of times you have to put boundaries, with certain people too, because the grief is, if you're wanting to be in that place of grief and experience everything, which is healing, grief, crying.
Letting
Crying
it's
it
closure.
lets it
It's
out.
closure,
Yes,
right?
yes.
So one of my very first, I never
Yes.
told you the story. One of my very first patients was a lieutenant colonel. I was in the Army when I trained. I was at Walter Reed, and he just had this rash all over his body, and they couldn't figure it out. So they go, it's psychosomatic. And he'd lost his wife 2 years before and had never cried. And so it comes out in other ways. That
yeah.
stress and your skin is actually one of the organs that
And neck and back
plays
problems are
stress.
common too.
Yes.
So
Yes.
one thing, Sandra, that I find interesting because I watch you and how you handle things. I know that's probably a pain. I don't know if it's a pain that doesn't go away. I would assume it is. But you're always going to think about her and love her and be a little sore,
Yes.
right? You're going to have that
Yes.
scar. But what I've noticed that you still do is you honor her. You still acknowledge her birthdays. And I know you came up to me in January and you asked me to pray for you, and you said it's going to be a hard day because I just want my friends to pray for me and be
Yes.
around me.
Yes.
Because it was January, the date
Yeah.
you said it was the anniversary of when the accident had happened,
Yes.
and I just thought that was amazing. I'm like, you got your family together and you celebrated her birthday. You still do these things, but they don't, from my perspective, seem to impact you negatively. In fact, you seem to gather your tribe around you, and they You honor her and it strengthens you.
Yeah, I learned it was easier for me to embrace my grief on holidays and, just let everybody know, hey, you know what? Yes, it's a happy time and my family's here, but someone's missing. It's like a limb. Someone's missing from our family. And so we acknowledge the fact, but we don't stay in it. We acknowledge her birthday. My siblings, we do things like, she liked going to P.F. Chang's and listening to, Counting Crows. And so we kind of have our little things that we kind of do, on that day of her birthday on April 5th. And I do ask my family and my friends to pray for me because it is a struggle. Grief will never go away from my life. I mean, thinking about her, it's not that you move on from it or anything, it's still there, but you are able to function in life with the reality that someday I'm going to see her again, because I have a big picture of her in my hallway. The last picture that we had all taken, that was really a gift from the Lord. She had come home for my birthday and we took that picture and it went out for everybody in January because I give out New Year cards. Everybody had that picture of Ron, Tiffany, and I in January as our New Year card. So that picture hangs in my hallway. And I walk by it all the time, and I always say to her, I'll see you in a blink of an eye, because that's kind of what the Lord says, So,
and because of what happened, her life has touched millions of other people.
What is the name of your book?
So it's that little shift. I want us to talk before we stop, and then we'll stop and come back. What are some things to say? And I'm sorry for your loss. Because you are. It is just honest. Yeah. I wish I had the right words.
Right.
Please know I care and I'm here for you. You and your loved ones are in my prayers. I have someone who I'm very close to whose husband's dying of cancer. And just the fact that I reach out and say, I'm thinking about you today.
Yeah.
Is there anything I can do to help? They started a GoFundMe campaign to help deal with some of the expenses. And I donated just to like connecting. I can't imagine how you feel, which is honest. I can't imagine how you feel unless I've gone through something similar. I'm here for you. Can I go to the funeral, which is an often important sign of support? Want to talk about what happened. Just be present like your friend was. Share a memory. Be empathic. It's okay for you to show your feelings. Continue connecting even after months. This is so important because people they'll say one or two things and then they'll let you go because they don't know what to do. Listen for guilt. People who are grieving often feel guilty and wish they'd done something different. I've seen that so often. So an example from one of my favorite books.
You touched on that.
Called The Grief Recovery Handbook. Griever, my son committed suicide. I feel so guilty. Grief recovery specialist. Did you ever do anything with intent to harm your son? Griever, no. The dictionary definition of guilt implies intent to harm. Since you had no intent to harm, can you put the G word back in the dictionary? You're probably devastated enough by the death of your son. I never thought of it that way. All right, when we come back, more practical tips on dealing with something we're all going to deal with or have dealt with, grief.
If you're enjoying the Brain Warriors Way podcast, please don't forget to subscribe so you'll always know when there's a new episode. And while you're at it, feel free to give us a review or 5-star rating, as that helps others find the podcast.
If you're interested in coming to Amen Clinics, use the code PODCAST10 to get a 10% discount on a full evaluation at amenclinics.com. For more information, give us a call at 855-978-1363.